everyone, this is Christine from the Door Doctor, and today we're going to be making a fall-inspired sunflower wreath using a very simple petal design, a very simple leaf design, and the highlight or the centerpiece will be this flower center to top off your sunflower. So this should be a really quick one. The technique is not that complicated, but I think the impact is really nice using the colors that I've put together today. So part one for our tutorial will be going through supplies. Part two will be all about making your petal and applying it to your wreath frame. And then part three usually is just finishing touches on your wreath. All right, so to get started, for supplies, we're gonna be using my favorite poly burlap mesh. We're gonna be using two different colors. The star of the show is gonna be this burgundy colored poly burlap mesh. And for this wreath, this size wreath, we're probably going to use a full roll of the 10-inch wide poly burlap mesh. In most supply stores, most online stores, these come in 10-yard rolls. So you'll probably be using anywhere from 30 to 35 squares of mesh. You're going to be cutting the mesh into 10 by 10-inch squares. So try to use the full roll. You'll use most of them for this project. And then for the leaves, we're going to use also a poly burlap mesh that comes in an olive green. I plan to use, I believe I'm going to use 5 10 by 10-inch squares for this. For the leaves, if you want them to peek out from the back of the flower a little bit more than what is shown here today, you can certainly cut the lengths of mesh a little bit longer. So sometimes if you do more of a 10 by 11-inch rectangle, for instance, that'll give a little bit more, body to the leaf so that you can see it in the back. We're going to be placing our petals on this Dollar Tree wire wreath frame. This is a 8-inch diameter frame. I use these a lot, mainly because the finished diameter is usually 20 to 21 inches wide. And I just happen to like that size for shipping when I sell them, and also for placement on my door. And I've gone ahead and already placed this piece of mesh in the center of my wreath frame. This is number 5 plastic mesh. I most commonly buy this in sheets at Hobby Lobby. And the reason I like this size mesh is because it fits my 8-inch zip ties quite nicely. We're going to be applying all of our flower petals using 8-inch, or I'm going to use 8-inch zip ties. Certainly you can use shorter ones. That doesn't matter too much. Number 5 plastic mesh simply means that there are 5 squares per inch of length. If you want to use number 7 mesh, so there'll be 7 smaller holes per inch, that's fine. You just need to use a smaller zip tie to fit through there. Or you could use pipe cleaners to apply your petals too. I just prefer zip ties for all my flower wreaths. And then for the centerpiece, we're going to be using this. This is about, I think it's about a 5-inch in diameter sunflower centerpiece. This one I purchased on craftoutlet.com, and we're going to need to wire it because it doesn't come already wired, but we'll be wiring this and applying it to the center of our wreath. And then finally, for sort of finishing touches, I usually like to trace out and cut a circle of felt to cover the back of the wreath, just to make it finished a little bit more cleanly. And then you'll need a coordinating color pipe cleaner that we'll use to make the loop of our wreath so that you can hang it more easily. All right, so I'm gonna clean off all of this, and then when we come back, we'll start making some of our flower petals. All right, welcome back. So I've cleaned everything away with the exception of my wire wreath frame and my burlap squares, as well as my zip ties and my scissors. And I've already pre-cut all of these squares. Typically with poly burlap mesh, I use a wood burner tool, which I have actually off to the side here. I use one of these wood burners with a beveled tip to cut through my mesh. That way it seals these sort of plasticky edges along the edge of your squares pretty nicely. They have a tendency to fray less once you do that. We're going to be using, I believe, 3 to 4 rows of petals, depending on how they fit here. This is a very similar design to one that I do with a starfish, and usually I use a total of 4 rows of petals, and so I anticipate something similar. We're going to start by placing our petal on this wire here, so the second wire, not the outermost one, but one in, and then we'll move our way inward to the center of the flower. For this wreath, the first row we'll place 9 petals, and you can see that this particular frame is separated into 3 different sections, so each section will have 3 different petals, so a total of 9. All right, so let's take our mesh. So this is just a very simple folded petal. What I like to do is I usually like to start with the mesh square sitting so that the curved sides come up towards you, and I usually like to sit it in a diamond shape with a point towards my midsection and another point facing completely away from me. And you're going to take the point that the square corner, if you will, that's closest to you, go up and meet the other corner, flatten that into a very large triangle, try to keep it as neat and even as possible. And then you're just going to simply gather this triangle from the base to the tip, to the apex of the triangle. Usually I do like 3, 4, 5, something like that, little gathers like that, or I can turn it around like that. And then you're just going to pinch this little middle part where you've formed your gathers. All right, I always think it looks a little bit like a fish tail or a mermaid tail. And then you're going to simply apply that to that second wire on your wreath frame. And just like that. We'll do a few more together. So again, take that corner that's facing you, bring it up to meet the other opposite corner of the square, flatten your triangle, and then gather it from the base to the peak of the triangle. And then you sort of pinch it in the middle, and then I like to kind of swivel it, grab it, and then zip tie it. I'll sort of slide that over so you have this seamed edge from part of the petal that covers the cut edge of the prior petal. All right, and we're going to move clockwise around the circle here. All right, take this corner, bring it up to the opposite corner of your square, flatten your triangle, and gather it. Give it a little pinch, a little fold, another pinch, and then apply it to your wreath frame. All right, so there's 3 so far. We'll do a few more together, just so everybody gets the hang of it. There's different ways you can fold this petal. I contemplated using a slightly different technique here where you can take your triangle, you gather it, and then you could try this certainly, and then you fold it this way so that you have almost a pinwheel shape. That's something else you could try if you prefer. I just like the simplicity of this. All right, pinch it one. Place that one down, so that'll give us, if I can get my zip tie in here. I'll give you number 5. All right. All right, so just that easy. So I'm going to break away and do the remaining 4, so 9 total for this row. We'll come back and start row number 2 together. I anticipate that similarly we'll do another 9 petals. And if you wanted to start that ahead of me, you could certainly do that. We'll place that second row of petals just inside where this mesh starts. So you could angle them so that you have the head of each petal in between row 1. But I'll be right back and we can do that together if you prefer. All right, welcome back. So row 1 is done. So our first 9 petals are in. And now we're going to similarly do a second row of 9 petals. And I've already gone ahead and placed a zip tie for row 2. So I've just placed it just inside where the mesh first starts. And you're going to apply your 9 in between the heads of the prior 9 petals. And I just already spaced my row 1 so that each petal is fairly equally spaced. All right, so same technique as before. You're gonna make your triangle, gather it in the middle, pinch it in the middle, shape it a bit, and then apply it. And then what happens as you move around, because this second row is fairly close to the first row, you'll notice that when you tighten your zip tie, it starts to bend the petal upward and gives it a little bit more fullness, which I like. I think that looks nice. So it's not such a flat looking wreath. All right, and again, we're going to work our way clockwise around the wreath. All right, so I'm going to again continue on my own. So we've got 3 of these so far. We'll place another 6 in these spaces, and then when we come back, we'll do row 3 together. I anticipate doing similarly another 9 petals. I'll show you zip tie placement when we come back, but I'll likely place the next zip tie just slightly in front of row 2. All right, see you in a bit. All right, I'm back. Row 2 is now done, and we're going to move on to row 3. And in thinking about it, row 3 may be our final row, because when I place this sunflower center in the middle, it almost covers row 2 and the zip ties from row 2. So I think if we do a 3rd row and bring them in a little closer to the center, this flower center will cover row 3 zip ties. It'll give it some fullness, and I don't think we're going to need or be able to really squeeze a 4th row of petals in, but we'll play it by ear. So row 3 again, I would say another 9 petals. And this time, place your zip tie right along the tip. Let's place them right here. The tip of row 2's petals. So that's about, 3 squares on the mesh inward from the last row, 3 to 4. 3 to 4 rows of square mesh holes forward. And it sits right along the head of the petals from row 2. Let me slide that out of the way. So same technique. You should be able to speed through it by now, I imagine. Let's see, they're going to be a little tighter, closer together, obviously, the closer you move to the center of the wreath, but you should still fairly easily be able to place another 9 petals. All right, we'll place number 2. I love this burgundy color. I love the burgundy color with this sunflower center, mainly because even though I usually use this, or I've traditionally used this particular flower center with yellow petals, it has little hints of sort of this brownish burgundy color along the edges. And matching it with this darker petal really seems to highlight that. So I think it looks nice. And I'm making this video in June, but I think I may put this on my door now and not wait for the fall. All right, so this is going to be number 3 for petals. And I do think this will be the final row because they're getting pretty close together. I think that'll give a good amount of fullness. And you should be able to easily place this sunflower center over those zip ties and hide them pretty well. I'll just do one more petal with you. All right. All right, so this is 4. Oops. Almost closed my zip tie without a petal. Let's get these zip ties out of the way and take a step back. All right, so that's halfway through row 3. You can see they're getting pretty tight together. I'm going to step away, finish the remaining 5, and then when we come back, we'll start placing our flower center. So have the flower center ready. I would additionally suggest either a pipe cleaner or some wire, floral wire that you can use to loop around the center. I'm going to also have a glue gun available to attach that wire, and then have your wreath backing, your felt wreath backing, as well as the leaves and the hook, and then we'll finish up. All right, so 3 rows are done. 27 petals total. I think that looks pretty full, and that should accommodate our flower center very nicely. And now we're going to move on to adding the leaves and then finishing our wreath. So for the leaves, I'm going to flip this guy over and start on the back here. And I think I'm going to use 5 leaves, and you can use any kind of petal technique for the leaves, but I think I'm just going to stick with what we've been using for the body of the leaf with a simple modification. All right, so first, before we do the actual leaf, what I'm going to do is place my zip ties. And what I like to do, I'm going to use 5 leaves total, and what I like to do is position my zip ties first and then go back and add my leaves. And what I'll do is I'll usually start where the little plastic mesh is, snake my zip tie down and under the inner wire of the wreath frame, and then come back up over the middle wire of the wreath frame, and then out and under the outer wire. So it's under, over, under. All right, get that out of the way. That's number 1. And then we'll add 4 more, and I just try to position them as evenly as I can. If you can't snake this zip tie through the actual squares of the plastic mesh, that's okay. I just make sure that I place the first, place it underneath that inner wire. All right, that's 2. Let's see, I'll place number 3 here. And then number 4. I'm catching all of these other bits and pieces of my crafts out of camera view here. My wreath is snagging all of it. All right, so here are 5 zip ties. Like I mentioned before, under, over, under when it comes to placement. And then we're going to use the same technique for our petal or for the leaf that we used for our petal, only using green, olive green poly burlap mesh. But this time, you're going to gather it in the middle. Instead of pinching it completely like you did before, you're simply going to apply it to the wreath like this, okay? You're not going to pinch it. You're not going to pinch it like that. You're going to leave it open, and you're going to place it right on the outside of that outer rim of the wire frame, and then cinch your zip tie. And I like to tuck it under a little bit, under the frame a little bit, before I fully pull the zip tie closed. And I'll bring that closer so you can see it. It's just sort of tucked under that wire. All right, do a couple more together. So again, same as before, fold your triangle, gather it up the middle, but instead of completely pinching it, you just place it on top of your zip tie, tuck it under the outer part of the wreath frame, and then close your zip tie. All right. Do number 3. And you can play with this a little bit, decide how you want, where you want the leaf to peek out from the back, or how much of it rather you want to see, and how many leaves that you want. You could certainly add more. That's number 4. And then this will be number 5. It doesn't have to be perfectly even either. All right, so now we have 5 leaves. I'm just going to cut my zip ties. Making a mess of my zip ties over here. I'll flip this over so we can take a look. See how we like that. Yep, just gives a little show through on the back. Again, if you want the leaves to be a little bit longer, you can make them more into triangles and use the same technique. All right, and then they'll show a little bit better. All right, so now let's focus on our flower center. So let me pull up a chair here and bring into view a couple of things. So I have off to my side, I have my glue gun firing up over here, and I have some wire, just a little floral wire. And you know, there are a couple different things that you can do. First, let me take the sticker off the back of this, get that off. This particular wreath center, a lot of them are just flat. They're just styrofoam on the back with nothing. This one has this little stem that I don't want to pull off necessarily, but it has this base, this green base that you can kind of lift up a little bit. And what I like to do is I like to wind the wire, not over it the way I'm showing, but underneath this green circle. It's pretty firmly in place there, and then you can add a little bit of glue underneath there to make sure it doesn't come loose at some later time point. So what I'm gonna do is just cut the length of my wire, take my flower center, see if it'll cooperate with me today. And I'm just going to, yep, it's going to. Just gonna wrap this around a couple of times. Give it a good snug so it's nice and tight. And that'll give you a couple of strands that you can wire that in. And then just for extra insurance or security, I'm gonna place a little bit of glue, hopefully without burning myself, just at the edges here. Okay, give that a second. All right. And that should allow you to attach that pretty easily. All right, you can use pipe cleaner for that. You can certainly cover this with little bits of felt to cover the glue, cover the flower center. All right, so that's still sort of drying, but I'm still gonna go ahead and try to wire it in. So just find a center position in the middle of my wreath. That should go in pretty easy. Flip it around here. Make sure it's staying where I want it. Yep. And then we'll tighten that. All right, and then you're going to cut the tails of your wire and tuck those in. Get those out of the way. All right, so that's it for your flower center. Very easy. And now it's just about finishing your wreath. So you have the front done, you have your leaves on. Now I like to add the hook. And so for the hook, I use a pipe cleaner. This one, just conveniently, I had a similar color to the petals, but certainly doesn't have to be so matchy-matchy. This is about 12 inches long, and I usually fold it in half. And then each half, I fold in half again, so that it makes what I think looks like, when you pull it out, looks like the letter W, okay? And the point of the W is going to be the tip of your hanging loop. And so simply take that tip of the W and thread it underneath the outer wire of your wreath frame. These two legs of the W will sort of catch on the wreath frame. And you're gonna take each one of these, move this into the center, you're gonna take each one of the legs of the W and wrap it around the middle. So there goes one. Here's the other leg. I'm gonna bring it around the other way. I like to give both a good pull so that it's tight. So you should be left with a loop up the top, and then these two strands. And then I just usually like to wrap each one again around the front, around the base of that loop, pull them again, and then just find a place to tuck them away. So usually I try my best to wrap them through the inner wire, or the innermost portion of the wreath. Let's see if this guy's gonna cooperate with me. I don't know. Yep, there you go. All right, I'm gonna bring that closer. So just sort of tuck them away up here. And then here is your loop. You can make it however long you want. And then to completely finish things, you're gonna use your felt circle that I've already cut. This one's got a little bit of lint on it from all of my crafts here. You cut this to fit the shape of your wire wreath frame. I've already used this little teeny tiny hole punch. It's about 1/16 of an inch to cut little teeny tiny holes around the perimeter of this circle. That way you can use your zip ties to attach it to your wreath frame. And I simply just loop my zip tie underneath and up through the hole that I've made. And I usually do about 8 or so around the outer rim of the wreath, because you hate to go through all this work, make this beautiful wreath, and then have the back look unfinished, or have the back damage your door or your wall. So it's an extra step, but I think it's always a worthwhile bit of time. And I don't have burgundy color zip ties, of course, but I'm just going to use white ones. I don't think that matters too much. You could use a black felt backing, black zip ties. It's probably easier to find. Sometimes I lose track of all the little holes that I've punched. I get a lot of questions about the small hole punch, and that I purchased. That was a Martha Stewart craft tool that I believe I got at Michael's years ago. I can't find it, but I think you can find something similar on Amazon, or it's about 1/16 of an inch. All right, there we go. Straighten those out. I can tighten all our zip ties. Alrighty, very good. Now we'll just cut the ends here, tuck them in, flip it over. And let's see what our finished product is like. All right. Make sure we've got our center there where we want it. All right. Very good. Well, so this was a quick and easy one. Hopefully you like this. This is great for fall, but honestly, I think I'm gonna go put this on my front door right now for summer. Hopefully you enjoyed this tutorial as much as I did. If you wanna see other wreath tutorials, just make sure you hit subscribe. Have a nice day.